Bienvenidos, global Fright fans. This is Jaime En Fuego for the horror show with a special presentation about the super show Supernatural. That's right, us here at the horror show are doing a special panel at the PHOENIX COMICON 2016, and that is going down June 3rd, 6 p.m., where we are going to be talking about all 11 seasons of the show. Yes, that is a staggering amount. Guess who hasn't watched the show before, though? This guy. However, I am in the midst of the most massive binge watch imaginable in these couple months heading up to the convention, and that is because on this panel we have our two experts. We have CJ Valenzuela and Ashley Mall, and then we also have two of our hosts from the show who are super fans as well, Cecil Laird and Marsha Parker. So what is this binge watching journalist gonna be giving his opinion for? Well, that's because there's a certain horror show that I've been told has a lot in common with Supernatural, at least as far as tone goes, and that's, yep, you guessed it, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And yet the show is so very different. So I just got done with the first season, and what I'm going to be doing as we approach the convention and approach this panel is I'm going to be giving some updates to you guys, the Supernatural fans across the globe, about my experiences getting acquainted with this show. So first and foremost, it's a show that I had heard about. I have a lot of friends that watch it and love it, and yet it got lost in the shuffle from the little bits and pieces I saw here and there from like promos and, you know, I guess commercials and stuff, or if another friend was watching it when I went over to their house, it looked like a more broed out version of the aforementioned Buffy with a little bit of X-Files sprinkled in. In this first season, well, it kind of felt a lot like the X-Files to me, at least in the sheer fact that it was very monster of the week, okay? And there were episodes that mirrored like Final Destination, where, you know, there's a plane crash and there's a spiritual presence on there that's trying to go after the survivors, and then there was an episode with a hook guy that reminded me of I Know What You Did Last Summer. There was one about a possessed vehicle, and it kind of had a Christine type vibe to it. So monster of the week, I can hang, but you know, it wasn't until the later episodes in this first season where, you know, they bring back John Winchester, Sam and Dean's father, and they really started to properly explore the mythos of this show that I started to finally get hooked. That's not to say that I didn't like some of those early Monster of the Week episodes. I love the Bloody Mary episode. I love the Scarecrow episode. The Shapeshifter episode called Skin was really awesome, but as I mentioned, the show really felt to me like it was finding its proper footing as the season went on. I love the dichotomy between the brothers. I myself am an older brother, and so I identify the most with Dean. Dean is my dude, and the fact that he loves his classic rock and his older stuff too. I previewed season 2 just the tiniest bit, and I can already tell that they're finally getting that classic rock vibe of the music and stuff. They got more money. The show got popular, and so they had some Skrilla to toss out at the licensing. I also love the progression of Sam's character in particular. The fact that he starts out very wide-eyed and naive, and yet you see him as the episodes go on shifting into this role, and by the end of the season, like where he's fully embracing those telekinetic powers and those powers of you know, vision and premonition, you really see him becoming much more furious of a person almost, and much more of that bloodthirsty vendetta similar to his father, and Dean sees it too, and it's really interesting how they almost shift roles as we come to the end of this first season, because Dean is becoming the one who's more passive, and he's like, hey man, this isn't worth dying over, you're just like dad because of that. And Sam is the one who's like, you know, he's just all out ready to avenge his girlfriend who was, you know, disposed of in the same fashion as their mother. And so very interesting parallels. I love the humor of the show. It really just keeps that kind of offbeat vibe that I loved so much about Buffy, where they get on the plane and Dean is sitting there, you know, humming Metallica, and Sam looks over at him and calls him out on it, and he's like, yeah, it helps me calm down sometimes. And those are just the little bits that I love so much, where Dean compares Sam to the blonde chick on the Munsters. I love that too. And you know, where he's talking about, oh, they're gonna sacrifice us, you know, which is a little classier. I also love the little nods to like the Ghostbusters with the paranormal investigators, Spengler and Xenomorph, and also how they were doing that whole WWBD, what would Buffy do? That cracked me up, man. And then Dean's line about, demons I understand, but people are just crazy. I mean, the show is just filled with so many humorous anecdotes and just very tongue-in-cheek and very meta references to the genre as a whole. And so that's why the humor sprinkled throughout, it really just impressed me so much and kept me hooked and kept me interested in those earlier episodes where they were still kind of developing the chemistry between the characters. The show is also, much to my surprise, a lot more violent than I expected. We're talking about gunshots to the head with that cult, man. We're talking about slitting throats, full-on decapitations. I mean, this show, despite being network television, it was WB at this point, eventually that morphed into the CW, but network television, man, and we're talking of the more teeny bopper variety a lot of the time, and some may accuse this show of being just that, but I really feel like it has universal appeal, and so at this point, I am excited to see a possible return of Dean's Love Cassie. I am excited to see if Meg is going to show back up, despite what happened to her at the very end with being exorcised and presumably disposed of. I love the fact that we finally got a taste of this super demon, that their father, went into seclusion as he was hunting because he didn't want the boys to get hurt. And I also loved how they can have some seriously endearing emotional moments when Sam and John, his father, are finally having that heart-to-heart about, why he left him, went off to school, and why he still loves him, and why he was trying to protect him. And I mean, emotionally charged, man, and I really just felt the connection between the characters. The developing mythology, once again, of the show is what has really hooked me. I am so stoked to be a part of this panel and to be the newbie on the panel who is just blasting through all of this, and there's a lot of ground to cover still, but I look forward to giving you guys updates all across the web about my journey through Supernatural as we approach this panel. So I have been Jaime En Fuego. I'm here on The Horror Show, but you can always find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I have my own YouTube channel as well where I talk about all kinds of other entertainment beyond the spooktacular. So I extend a grande gracias to you guys across the planet, these supernatural fans. I'm just learning more and more about how popular this show is, that there's conventions that they do specifically about this show, just like Star Trek or Star Wars or something. So that shows the endearing popularity of it and the fact that after 11 years already, it is still just as popular as ever, if not probably more so if they just renewed it for another couple seasons. So I am so very stoked to sit down right now and start watching the second season proper, and I look forward to bringing you guys more updates once again as we approach this panel. So I've been Jaime En Fuego. Hasta luego, sin amigos. But I look forward to seeing you sooner rather than later. And until then, stay scared. And I'm gonna go watch some more Supernatural.